Wow, I love it. Love it, love it. This is the first time I've had such an amazing response from everybody when I said good evening. So, welcome to the 10x Growth Strategies event on the topic Enterprise Trust and Risk in the Age of AI. What a critical topic we had today. So, we had a packed agenda here. We're going to start with some introductions about the organization, 10x Growth Strategies. We have a couple of amazing sponsors, our host sponsor and another sponsor, Strinto. We'll have some messages from them, and then we go straight into two panels. The first panel is going to be a founder panel, and the next one is a responsible AI panel. And the way we do these events here, we want it to be interactive, so we'll have time for questions also, right? So that is our plan for today. A quick introduction on myself. My name is Preethy Padmanabhan. I'm the co-host of 10x Growth Strategies community, along with Deep. Deep, you want to say hi? Hi. All right. And so Deep and I started this community about a year and a half ago. And our goal was to bring together the ecosystem of founders and investors so that there's mutually beneficial connection. We want the right founders to find the investors they need and also for investors to get deal to. And along with that, we also started getting executives from companies also who wanted to be part of the ecosystem. So the community has grown very rapidly, and we have about 7,000 between our Luma and LinkedIn and Partyful. And our last big event we had in Q4, during SF Tech Week, we had over 1,100 signups. So that was a massive event during Tech Week. And we have these monthly events, and we also have an event coming up. I'll talk more about that. If you would like to connect, feel free to scan, as well as if you'd like to learn more about these recordings that get posted on the podcast, those are the links to follow. So without further ado, I'd love to welcome our panelists on stage, Tatyana, Prukalpa. We'll get started with a quick round of introductions.
Tatyana Mamut, co-founder and CEO of WayFound. WayFound is an AI agent supervision and improvement platform. Anybody here have AI agents? Building AI agents? All right, awesome. So you probably need an extra layer of supervision on top of them, and we'll be talking a little bit more about that.
Prukalpa. Hi, everyone. My name is Prukalpa. I'm the founder of Atlan. We are a context layer for AI. So what we do is we connect into existing data, semantics, system affected ecosystems and convert it into a shared governed context layer that AI consumes across the ecosystem. So right from, what my customers tell me is that everybody wants to be my agentic platform and we're going to have hundreds of agents. We solve that problem for them. And excited for the panel today.
Thank you. Well, let's get started with the first question, which is, what does enterprise trust really mean to you? And in terms of your company, your context, how do you actually enable that for your customers?
Yeah. So previously, I held VP of product and head of product roles at both Salesforce and AWS. And I learned a lot about what enterprise trust means from those two companies. I think one of the first things is, of course, from AWS, getting to 3 nines or 5 nines, right? So one of the big issues with this current iteration of AI technology is, of course, it is far more probabilistic and far less deterministic. So it's not just about, outages or things like that, would make your systems go down, but you also have a whole new layer of questioning of how do you get to 3 nines or 5 nines of reliability when you're putting in AI agents, right, built on LLM-based technology. So the best practice that is emerging is to have what is called a supervisor or a guardian agent on top that sits as a separate layer on top of all of your agents. Gartner recently talked about this. They put out a market report on guardian agents. And with one layer of supervision, if you're working on a robust Anthropic, OpenAI, Gemini model, you have about 97, 98% reliability. With one extra layer of supervision, you get to 3 nines, over 3 nines. With 2 supervisor models, you get to 5 nines. So that is the way to solve this problem. And I do think that that is where a lot of enterprises are coming from as best practices and standards.
So great. I think that multi-layer security is very critical. Prukalpa, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I think it goes back to like what is trust and how do you actually deliver trust to an end user or as we go into like purely agentic outcomes. I'll give you a story. We had a customer who rolled out a AI analyst, and there was somebody who asked a question, and the question was, we're in an interesting global environment. And so the question was, based on the war situation, what changed for my top 10 shows media platform? It's a relatively simple question, but it's a really complicated question to answer. Starting with, which war? And then how do you take this into like time series? And how do you actually when did it start and when did it end? What do you take? The second question, what does top 10 mean? Because if marketing asks the question, it means top 10 by views. But if editorial asks the question, it's probably top 10 by ratings. And then eventually it's like, how do I actually calculate this metric and what does it actually mean in my enterprise and what is the business context, things like that. And so as we think about this, we think that there's actually like a pretty complicated, like layered question, which is, how do you take intent? How do you layer on top of intent and user, tacit knowledge and context that exists inside an organization? How do you on top of that layer, who gets to actually access this? Right? I had a CBO the other day who said, I'm building an HR agent and they're allowed to access payroll data, but nothing else in my company is allowed to access payroll data because I don't want it spitting out my CEO's salary. Really easy to say and really hard to enforce in practice. And so how do you actually take on all of those multi-layers of knowledge and meaning and context and data and bring it together in a way that actually delivers trust and accuracy on the other side? That's kind of how I think about trust.
Wow. If I was to summarize in one single word, it's like solving complexity, right? That's what these two amazing founders are doing. And this whole enterprise trust is the layers of complexity after complexity, and their solutions are providing that. I want to take the next step. We are seeing a lot of lawsuits and issues that are coming up, especially with AI and agentic AI. And some of it may be because of not having a continuous monitoring or continuous compliance. I'd love to ask the panel about your thoughts on how do you solve for that, right? How do you enable that? And what are some examples that you can bring up on how it could be done better?
So do you guys all know about the lawsuits that are happening now? There's obviously the Google lawsuit and OpenAI lawsuit, right? About their chatbots going off the rails and, creating really terrible situations with, people killing themselves and other people. There's also the Workday lawsuit. There was a ruling that just came down yesterday, and the lawsuit's going to continue on. But ultimately, I think one of the things to remember is that this is not an engineering problem. The best AI engineers in the world, right, cannot get the agents to behave deterministically. And so we're not going to solve this with purely engineering the agents in a different way. And so we have to kind of think about how do we currently deal with probabilistic technology that we know about in our organizations. Humans are a probabilistic technology, right? Humans cannot be fully controlled. And so what we do with humans is we have managers and supervisors watching them, giving them feedback. And it just so happens that the courts are treating AI agents just like human employees. So if you need to be actually watching, supervising, and monitoring everything that your agents are doing. For those of you with AI agents, how many of you guys sample and read logs and traces? Okay. So sampling doesn't work because when you're sampling, you're reading at most, 23% of the logs and traces, right? You need to be reading 100% to actually ensure that you're compliant with the law. Remember, with OpenAI and Google, right? They've got, billions of conversations a month. And these things happen at very low frequency, but when they happen, they are extraordinarily damaging. And companies are being found negligent, right, when they are not actively supervising and monitoring their platforms. So that is an element of risk. And again, they're just like human employees in that way, and they're being treated in that way. So you would never put a human employee in their job without an active manager giving them feedback, right? And so you should never deploy an AI agent without a supervisor that's watching everything that they're doing.
So that comes to the human in the loop, and that's it.
No, it's the opposite. It's actually the AI agent in the loop. Humans are too slow, right? When humans have to sample the read logs, you're never going to get through all of them. It's not going to work. Human in the loop, this is the problem, right? With AI agents, human in the loop really, it breaks down very quickly. So no, you need another AI agent that is specifically built for AI agent supervision.
Got it. Prukalpa, do you have any other thoughts that you want to share with continuous monitoring?
Yeah, I mean, I think something to think about here is also that we seem to think about AI, like we hold AI to a standard that we don't hold humans to. And I think what that means in many ways, and I think the reason it is, yes, you can treat it like an employee, but the problem is you can't fire it. And you can't send it to jail, right? And so, like, well, if something gets screwed up, like, who's ultimately at fault? Is it the human who deployed the AI agent, or is it the AI agent itself? And these are complex problems. I don't think we as a society have an answer to this problem. But I think what that means for a company is that you need to be able to start solving actually for the inefficiencies that existed in our human systems. For example, if there was a, manager running an interview and they did something that was discriminatory, unfortunately, you could never prove it and you could never sue someone. But that inefficiency cannot exist in a world where you're deploying AI. And so I think a lot about how do you build the system? How do you build traceability? How do you build traceability starting from, there's so many points of failure in all of this, apart from it just being a non-deterministic system. There's a failure at the system of record layer, there's a failure at the data layer, there's a failure at an agent layer, there's a failure at a state layer, because all of this is changing. So if an AI agent makes a mistake, how do you go back and see why did it make a mistake? And how do you correct that? And so a lot of attention needs to shift from let's make a single agent work to actually build a system that can catch, in some ways, the inefficiencies that exist today in the human world.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think both of you brought up such important things, especially the consequences of not doing this correctly can be very wide, real life, affecting real life lives at stake here, especially if it is in a, say, healthcare situation or even autonomous driving, right? We want to make sure those are all working well for us. So it all comes to possibly even the engineering AI architecture layer. And I think Prukalpa, you slightly alluded to that. Would you like to add color on how do you architect these systems to be compliant from the beginning?
So I think a lot of it starts at the data layer, which is, what is the, how do I tag PII versus not? How do I tag compliance stuff versus non-compliant stuff? How do I even differentiate what's personally identifiable versus not? So I think a lot of it actually starts at how do you think about solid AI-ready data systems, how to build. And actually, I think the most beautiful thing about what exists today versus what existed 2.5 years ago is that AI can do a lot of this really well. And so we have something that we call context agents. And what it does is it basically sits on top of your data. It connects all of your systems. And then it does a lot of this stuff. And now we're getting to a point where, humans, in fact, it's doing a better job than humans. Because it can just read and traverse through enterprise data in a way that a human cannot. And so I think a lot of it starts at the data layer. I think on top of that, you add on, we've started calling this kind of like a context layer, which brings together actually many layers of policy. How do you bring together policy? How do you bring together data? how do you bring together systems of context? And how do you make that, and context paths have been really hot, and so I'm not going to name drop it again, but like, how do you think about that? On top of that, we think about the AI control plane, right? And so that's kind of like a lot of what Tatyana is talking about, but like, how do you build a single AI gateway? How do you build a model council? How do you build, eval systems? And then all of those, I think, kind of feed finally into the agentic layer. And the mistake that a lot of people are doing is that they're just trying to solve the agent problem. And actually, that's the easiest part of the problem to solve. The hardest part is actually building the system, really building the machine that can build itself in today's world.
I totally agree. And I do think that all these layers need to be rethought, from the beginning, because regular software engineering is not really adequate for these systems today. The one thing I'll add is maybe another anecdote, which is how many of you guys have like customer service agents in your company? Do you have no, nobody. Okay, we have a lot of folks start off with usually implementing a customer service agent on WayFound. And sometimes the customer service agent has been running for months and everybody thinks it's fine. And then when the supervisor starts reading everything that it's doing, we realize it's actually offering a lot of refunds. And nobody realized that because a lot of the customers don't really complain, And so what's going on there? Because there's nothing in the data that says offer refunds. There's nothing, all the directives and guardrails say do not offer refunds, never offer refunds. Here's what's happening. The customer service agent has a reward function. Its reward function is close a case, high NPS score. When it gets stuck, what does it do even if there's nothing in the data layer? You get it, right? What's the fastest way if there's no data that tells it what to do to close the case and make the customer really happy? Offer a refund. It does not live anywhere in the data. So there's another thing that this particular technology does that no other technology has done before other than human beings, right? Because if you have a customer service rep, you could imagine a young customer service rep doing that too, even though they were trained not to do it. And so again, even if the data is perfect, the guardrails are perfect, agents still do crazy things.
Actually, I have a story similar to that personally, which is I had purchased a premium plan. I purchased a premium plan in many of these AI tools that I used. Right? It's better to do that. And I asked the agent, does my data get shared? Because now that I have a premium plan, does my data get automatically turned off, the data shared? And it said, yes, it does. And then I went and checked. It did not turn it on. And apparently that's only for the enterprise level plan. And as a personal level, I wasn't getting that. So it really was a warning sign for me that I really have to check and all this.
And the data was correct. I'm sure the data was set up correct.
Yeah.
Right? Like the data was set up correctly. Everything, the guardrails were set up correctly. And this technology, you have to do, like Anthropic just wrote a paper last month, 1 month ago, they published it. And it's like post-deployment monitoring is the most important thing that you can do because pre-deployment evals tell you very little about what's going to happen in actual deployment with these agents.
Yeah. Well, let's actually take a quick poll. How many entrepreneurs or founders in the audience? Okay, so I see about 30%, or at least a third or more. How many executives in the audience? Corporate executives, okay. We have 30%. And then are there any investors in the audience? Okay, a few, great. My question to you is, how can all these different set of people, be it corporate executives, investors, or founders, benefit from what you're offering in your companies? Like, how do you want them to work with your technology and get the value out of what you're building?
Hopefully, you guys will go and check out some of these reports. If you have the AI agents or you have for portfolio companies with AI agents, right, make sure they are being supervised by an independent layer that is SOC 2 Type 2 compliant and that is custom built for AI agent supervision, right? Having a verifier agent within your workflow actually has the same problem as the agent, because if you have an orchestrator agent that's actually doing the verification process, as many systems do today, it actually shares the same reward function as the main agent. And so you get into the same problems. So you need a truly independent platform to do this. So we'd love to chat with you if you're building agents.
Yeah, fairly similar. We today work right from, on one hand, Discord and Zoom up to MasterCard, General Motors type customers. So we're just, we work with a ton of customers across the board on building out their context layer and giving them a way to like take their AI agents into production. We see improving accuracy of over 5 to 10x of actually getting their AI into production at scale. If you think that there's someone in your company, or if there's like any friends that you think would be a good fit for us to talk to, we typically end up talking to the CIO, the CDO, the chief AI officer, one version of that inside a company. So would love introductions, would love to find a way to see if we can help you. And then for the founders in the room, we had something that we call an app context ecosystem. What that means is that at least a challenge the PC for a ton of startups is that it's really hard to get into an enterprise because you have to ask for connectivity and context and so on. We already have done a bunch of that, and we allow people to build apps on top of Atlan, which can reduce the time to value. And so we launched that in August of last year. We have a bunch of autonomous agent startups that are building on top of us, and so that might be helpful. Would love to explore that.
Compliance and the different laws that are globally present, the AI laws, they keep changing on a very regular basis, right? So my question to you is, how do companies actually have a proactive approach to handling that versus a reactive? How do they keep tabs and make sure they're compliant and they're able to mitigate all these risks? Any thoughts on how to do it?
So in WayFound, we have two different sets of guidelines that can be applied to an agent. One are global guidelines, and then there are agent-specific guidelines. We do have some pointers to just frameworks for regulation. Every company, of course, and your GC needs to decide exactly how to interpret the laws in which you operate, right? You can't really offload that to a technology platform, but ensuring also having our supervision layer, again, has these global guidelines that are interpreted by our supervisor in the same way for every single agent. Okay, so that's really important as well, because when you put those, if you write those legal policies into every particular agent as guardrails, the model could idiosyncratically and differently interpret them. Okay, so having one consistent supervision layer that is actually that your compliance and legal team can go into make sure these guidelines are written in the way that makes them comfortable is a really important piece of it. So that's how we're working with, especially enterprises. Many of our customers operate in Germany and in Australia and in the United States, all very different laws and regulations. And so they do align their agents in WayFound across those global guidelines.
Yeah, I think maybe the only thing I'll keep going back to systems, because I think the question here, the law is changing every day. It's like really hard to like tell this is what it will take to be compliant. Quite honestly, a lot of them are very open to interpretation. So the question is like, how do you build a system which can connect? If you just think about this on every layer of what goes wrong, the way we think about this is your AI application is an asset. Your AI agent is an asset. The evals it generates is an asset. The context that goes into it, we have this concept called context repos. So like that's an asset. That gets connected to your data systems, and that gets connected to your systems of record. Like all of these things that like should be treated and maintained almost like assets. Assets should be reusable and reproducible, right? So if you think about this from tomorrow you have a regulator that asks you XYZ, you should be able to go back and reproduce the state. And so how do you really think about your, data and AI governance systems, and how do you think about connecting all of these things? Like lineage is really important, explainability is really important. And so our most forward-thinking customers are building systems because they know that regulation is going to change. And so, I would just encourage like think very deeply about your foundational systems. So and go about implementing those. So you'll be ready for whatever change because change is coming.
Yes, that is true. Well, we'll open it for questions. If you can come up front and we'll have a mic for you so you can also be captured, or we can bring the mic. If you want to raise your hands.
Thank you so much. I was wondering, how are you thinking about hybrid systems that incorporate both deterministic software and AI?
Great question. It's the way we like to think about it is that there's a lot of things that actually determinism is better than non-determinism, and people consume stuff. So I will give you an example. I told you about context agents and Atlan. So very simple thing that we generate column descriptions. Like it's a super simple agent and generates column descriptions. Really hard to do though. You need like practice. Multiple steps to it. The first thing we do is we read SQL code. And we reverse construct from SQL code. Actually, really shitty thing to tell AI to do. It's really bad at it. So actually, the way the system works is it starts in a deterministic system. And it reverse constructs SQL. And it runs like a core SQL miner. And then it reverse constructs that. And then it goes and reads the APIs. And there's like a bunch of things that are deterministic. And then what AI does is we feed it lineage and we feed it SQL code, which has been generated deterministically. And then say, now write a column description. AI is really good at that. And so I believe the blend of real working technology in this new world is going to be really good at just building again the pipeline of what is a deterministic task and what are you better off doing deterministically, what are you better off doing using AI, and then how you actually build a system that allows you to do that. So
Hi, my name's Alice Staff. I'm ex-Google, and I'm working on some very interesting stuff in governance. Actually, you spoke about lineage, so I'm just curious if you can tell me more how you're looking at it. We're still figuring things out with my engineering team, and basically, we were asked by a director of data governance at a large organization, how are you thinking about lineage? So that was a question that I was actually new to that. So thinking about how we can wrap our heads or that.
yeah. Wow, really hard problem to start there. It's taken us 6 years to get to. There's no easy way to solve lineage because foundationally lineage is, and just for everyone as a core 101, in most companies, your data moves, and as data moves, you lose context of how the data is connected and how it flows. And so, foundationally, data lineage is about reverse constructing that. So the way we do this is we've actually built about 6 or 7 layers from a systems perspective to actually reverse construct lineage down to a column level. Your first is how do you get really good at reading SQL code? Again, your hardening of the system matters because, you go to, nested columns. You have to deal with that differently than dealing with, so there's a lot of complexity. Then we do APIs, and so we integrate into that. We've made lots of investments into pipeline operational ecosystems, so Spark, Open Lineage, so on. So, we're a core contributor into those ecosystems. Then on top of that, what exists as breaks, you have 2 options. You have AI to reverse extract on top of that, or you have, humans and so there's many multiple layers, there's failure modes in each of those layers. And the way we've not found an easy way to solve lineage, and so it's been build a lot of hard systems and then keep improving the system. Every system is different, and so keep improving the system to get good at lineage. We have an API, so that might be an easier way to solve the security problem.
So this is question for Tatyana. So I'm an investor in early stage
AI. So I run a VC fund. So I'm the founder GT called Essential Ventures. So I'm brand is Preethy as well. So we have invested. We're focusing on early stage investment. We care a lot about AI safeties and like. Unfortunately, we didn't invest at Profit, but we're OpenAI early investor from the fund. So my question is, what you're building is amazing, and I probably should do more research about this. But how do you see? I know there's a accuracy gap between what Anthropic AI labs can do, what and compared what your company can do. But how likely do you see the gap would be filled, and what's in the long term your company will depreciate yourself? Then no.
Fantastic. Good question. Great question. All right. So, yes. So the question is this an independent layer, right, that an independent company is going to do, or is this something that an Anthropic or an Agent Force or a Sierra is going to do? So, good news, good news and bad news for us. Good news on one hand is that now everybody's talking about this, right? So, it has made, finally, we founded, this idea comes out of a set of white papers I was writing in 2023, early 2023. So, we were very early, incorporated the company, launched AI Supervisor in early 2024. So, super early. Brett Taylor from Sierra has been talking about supervisors, right? Mark Benioff is also talking about supervisors. And certainly Anthropic has started writing papers about this, which is awesome. Now, the question is, do you want the same builders of the agents to also be grading their work and supervising them? And Gartner, if you have not read Gartner's recent market report on guardian agents, they come out with a very clear point of view, which is that this is something for sure that every platform will try to bring in. At the same time, Gartner believes that by 2030, there will be 2 or 3 big players that are specific supervision guardian agent platforms, because that independence is going to be really important. We are talking to some insurance companies as well about audit and independent supervision and how to create, they're starting to think about AI agent insurance. So you certainly want an independent platform, right? Where those audit trails are immutable, where there's a third-party supervisor. Now, we don't have our own model. We do put our supervisor on top of the latest models, and we're model agnostic. So if a customer wants it on one model or another model, we recommend that always our supervisor is running on a different model of on the latest model, but it's different than the underlying agent. We are agnostic as to what model the agents are running on, right? They're reasoning it if we read the logs, the trace, all open telemetry, chain of thought reasoning blocks, everything all the tool calls, all of that. And those are pretty consistent across all of the different models.
Yeah, I do give the users the molecule reports every once in a while.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a dashboard that you can go into anytime for business users. We also have an MCP server so engineers can go in and actually chat with our supervisor, get all the data there, and get all the improvements for the AI agents that they can ship directly.
Hi, I'm Mahesh. I am VP of Engineering at Poshmark. We are a marketplace. If you don't know Poshmark, we're a marketplace for fashion. I'm running the AI adoption there. I'm actually writing internal paper on how to scale AI internally with a policy that so we can move fast there. My question to you is both of you, what are your plans for this year? What are you planning to achieve? And how do you measure your guardian agents' performance? Can you share any insights on that? Yeah.
So our plans are lots of customers helping lots of companies. So that's pretty much, when you're running a startup, that's pretty much been your goal, right? And so on the supervisor, there are 2 things that we are really looking for, right? The false positives and the false negatives around how the supervisor is performing versus the expectation of the customer, right? So there are lots of ways that we do that. There is lots of different ways for people to give feedback to the customer. So remember, the supervisor is an agent itself with its own context, its own memory, its own kind of RAG underneath it. And so it is constantly learning whether it's doing a good job or not based on the feedback from the humans. The other thing is the improvement. So how quickly do the agents improve after our supervisors' improvement suggestions are implemented? Really, right? So most of our customers see massive improvement in their AI agents after just 2 weeks of deploying WayFounds, because the supervisor is constantly thinking about how to improve this agent. What are the directives? What is the knowledge that it needs? And so we're really looking at velocity as well. So false positives, false negatives, and then velocity of improvement.
So the question is like, what are your plans for this quarter and each quarter, and how are you picking about the ever-changing market?
A couple of things. I mean, we're in the middle of like a perfect storm. We Gardner and I don't like calling them that much in startup events, but Gardner went on stage and said, like last week at our biggest conference, and said context spheres is the most important enterprise asset that you create. And there was only one product that they demoed there, that was Atlan. And so we're kind of in this middle of everyone figuring out their enterprise architecture. How do we go become part of that enterprise architecture? That's a core part of what we're focused on. We've always been a very customer-centric company. So the reality is that most customers are figuring this out. They don't really know. And the world is changing very fast. And so how do you help customers in that journey that they are, based on where they are and where they have to get to? And how do you build an organization that can do that? Those are kind of some of the things where they came out and focused on.
Hi, my name is Giridhar. I'm the founder of NovaPro. We help companies adopt AI. My question was, like, the two examples you gave, one was about the agent going to put out the CEO salary, for example. That is one. And the second one was giving refund. Like, is it because of the agent which was set up, was it not given the right persona? For example, became like a super user? I mean, if you look at a human organization in the thing, right? Maybe in HR team, you would say that only the head of HR probably has access to all the salaries, not everybody else has that. So was the agent set up in the wrong way where it became the super user? In the second case, where it's a support agent and it's giving out refunds, well, instead of saying that do not give refunds, like for a human, you would say that check with your supervisor before you give refunds, right? Is it because you are giving the wrong persona to the agent, or is it anything else? Like, what was the...
Actually, it's a more complicated problem, actually. So first, I'll just start with, like, very few people know today how their payroll data flows directly to an AI agent system. So I just start there, like connecting this. Very few people are able to do that and say, hey, in my payroll system, this is something that is PII confidential, and it can only feed this one agent downstream, and it can't feed all these other 100 things. So first, like, there's like more basic problems there. But there's also more complex problems. Like, so for example, in the human world, if the human is a consumer, you can say, I will do permission-aware search. So meaning, whatever my permissions on Google Drive are, if I'm the human that is on ChatGPT, I should get the same permissions. That's an easy problem. Intellectually, not sharing it. Yeah, so it's a complex problem to solve. There are very few companies that have done this well. But with an agent, let's say Prukalpa has a document in Google Drive on sales refund rates or whatever. It's a personal document. I have written it. There's a sales agent that the company builds. Is it allowed to access that document or not? Whose context is it? Does the context belong to the company? Does the context belong to the person? And then how do you actually think about this at scale across like millions of enterprise assets? So there are actually some as you think about agents or service agents taking over multiple things that humans do, there are actually like some complex problems foundationally to be solved. And so to answer your question, I don't think it's about just the users or the personas being defined properly. I think there's actually some foundational questions to be solved there.
In the Air Canada example, I think the agent went and changed the policy.
That's right.
That is supposed.
Well, the agents can also go off and try to cover their tracks, right? When they do something wrong. So, I mean, so I think the bigger point here is that if you're trying to solve backwards looking for a particular thing that we already know about, an edge case that we know about, it's really easy. It's easy to solve backward looking an edge case problem.
Once you find it.
But the problem is that there are an infinite number of edge cases that you cannot possibly think of to correctly set up the agent, right?
Humans didn't even think of the way.
Right. So the issue is that you have to deal with the amount of complexity and literally the infinitude of different edge cases that you can never think of in advance. And if it were really an engineering competency problem, OpenAI and Google would not be in court right now.
I'm Sargo, and I belong to a company. I come from the business part of the company. I belong to a company where we make agents and outcomes for small and mid businesses. It could be anything. It could be whatever problem or pain point they have. So I'm not a technology person, but I have a question for you guys. So one thing, what we say in our company always is that we're all in discovery right now. We're all in the same boat, discovering, and so knowledge transfer is very important. Now, you've dealt with a lot of companies. What do you think is the more common mistake people make in companies when they try to build trust in AI?
I would say that the number one mistake people make is they think that this is normal software. This is not normal software. So all the normal software things that you learned, no, not going to work, not going to be adequate for this technology.
Well, actually, the last question, which we hadn't prepped for, but I think this is something very, fundamental. You being building unicorns or being part of unicorns, both of you amazing leaders. Tell us your leadership principle. Maybe like 1 or 2 sentences. What defines your leadership skills? 1 or 2 lines is hard. I have a 70-page leadership handbook.
Biggest board that is Atlan.com/leadership-handbook. It's good, really good. We have agents on top of that act
As coaches and managers, so it's given it a lot of context too. Mine over time has just become be the leader that brings out the person's best side on the other side. Over time, I've actually realized that it doesn't matter what kind of leader I want to be. What matters is like, what do I do for the other person on the other side to bring out the best in them? And that's really different depending on every single human that you interact with. Learning to keep my North Star is that. Like something I think about a lot is I don't want to be the most liked leader, but I definitely want to be one of the most respected leaders. Like I want people to like say the time that they worked with me in their lives, it grew the most in their lives. That's what I want to hold myself accountable to. And doing that comes in very different ways. And just finding a way to adapt myself to that. That's become my principle.
The word integrity is used a lot, but it over many years, I'm in my 50s now, and integrity is really my most highly valued principle. And by integrity, I mean I say what I think and I do what I say. And I am no bullshit. And so a lot of people opt out of working for me because they don't, and I'm not going to pander to somebody, and I'm not going to pander to a company because I want to keep working at the company. And, it's caused some friction with people, but that's okay. I would rather live in integrity and with a lot of friction than in non-integrity and have, high likability. I think Prukalpa would agree with that. Yeah.
Fantastic. What a great panel. Let's give a big round of applause.